So we're here at BBC Introducing with Pearl's Cab Ride for Browse Magazine live sessions, and I'm James Ash. So great to see you guys. You've got a big night ahead of you here at the BBC building. Tell me a little bit about Pearl's Cab Ride. We've had a bit of a historical interview with you last end of January with Browse Magazine. So I think it's important to touch on a bit of the history. You know, band from the 90s, moving into kind of what you've been up to this summer, and moving forward, you know, over to next year for the band.
You want me to?
Yeah.
Right, well, since our last interview, we've played Humberside Sesh, Freedom Festival, Trinity Festival, and spread our wings at various bars. And we're looking at out-of-town gigs now. We've recorded an EP, and we are in the process of now putting all our work together and hopefully getting a CD out. I'd like to say at the end of this year, but it won't be. But we're making tracks to do that. Yeah, we've just really been going from strength to strength, building up a big rapport. Here's Alan.
We've got Alan Raw coming in the building. Oh, Alan. Watching you guys on a number of occasions now, and we've talked recently, the music is certainly there. I mean, that's there's no question of that. And you are spawning as a band. I think you've gone from 7, 8 to how many piece now? Is it 8? Is it still 8 piece?
Settled on 8 at the moment, unless there's 9.
Unless there's
9. It's fluid. It's fluid.
On average. Usually 8. Yeah.
It's fluid. I mean, so you've done some big festivals again. What's what's been some real successes that you've experienced, you know, this summer in the area, and you know, moving forward, as you say, out of town.
I think with festivals like Humberside Sesh, we've gained a lot of younger fans who didn't know that, you know, who we were, and we've gained a lot of younger fans. And then playing Freedom, you get all the, you know, our name is kind of like becoming known. Pearl's Cab Ride, people know who Pearl's Cab Ride are, and we were talking, weren't we, to Young Jack about doing gigs with them because they're all moving to Manchester. So we're hopefully going to try and do nights where, you know, we can go over there, they can come, you know, and so we will, you know. And in fact, when I was listening to Young Jack last week, they were sound checking at Freedom Festival. I was like, I don't remember them really sounding nice. They actually sounded a bit like Pearl's Cab Ride. So, you know, maybe we've given these youngsters something to think about.
I mean, you said, was it acid jazz?
Acid jazz was in the 90s. That was like with James Taylor Quartet and Corduroy, Mother Earth, yeah. And you know, and we were, yeah, that was what that was called. That genre of music was called that, and we played a lot under that banner of acid jazz, and we played extensively. And in those days, we kind of did it as our job as well, didn't we? It was like we wrote every day, went out in an old IRAC van up and down the country, and we were in it for the long haul. And then other things happened, don't they? But we did that for about 5 years, and then we all split up and did our own things and had babies, jobs, other musical ventures, and then we got together again, as it's already been archived, that for the Welly 100 reunion gig, and we loved it, and it was like, well, actually, why don't we just do it? Why don't we just get together and form it again? And so we have, and here we are.
And when you reformed, was it straight back to the acid jazz feel, or was it a quick progression and turn around?
I think fashions change in terms of like musical genres and stuff like that. Actually, the kind of music we play has pretty much been constant since we started. You know, call it whatever you want, but we're there, we play a funky kind of music from Hull. So there's a lot of like local kind of influence coming in, there's a lot of Latin influences coming into it, soul influences, bit of reggae chucked in there as well. And you know, I suppose acid jazz, it fitted in with that in the early 90s.
But now we've all done other things, haven't we? So we've got all our own influences that we...
Yeah. But, you know, that kind of, whatever media wants to call a musical kind of like genre or whatever, you know, changes over time, doesn't it? But indeed, a lot of the music kind of really stays constant.
I mean, a good majority of the set that we do is what we wrote, you know, in the 90s, but we've updated it slightly. But now we've got 4 or 5, haven't we, that we are all currently written. So it's a lot of the old with, you know, like new songs as well, and obviously a couple of covers thrown in. But I think we've all got our own influences, but they all like a lovely melting pot.
And it's a cooking pot, Lynn.
It's a cooking pot.
It's a quota song. Yeah.
And so you touched on songwriting there. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that come about? How does that work? Is it an organic process between the whole band? Is it driven by an individual or two? How does that come about?
Well, in the early days, I would like bring melodies or whatever to the table, but now I think it's more that we're all much more doing out. You know, it's like a jam, I suppose, and from whatever comes from that, we should say yes or no to it, and it works. So yeah, it is like it's all of us, isn't it? We all contribute to it, even though they might say for the last few months I've not really.
Somebody might have an idea,
Yeah.
and then we jam around it. We'll see how we can come up with different bits and see what works with what, and then we sort of get something together and a song comes out at the end.
A lot of what we do is very much groove based, so we'll get grooves going, and then we'll play grooves for however long until it all locks in, and then we'll chuck other ideas in the pot and sort of mess around with stuff. But really, I see a lot of our influences has been that sort of like 70s, almost like 70s groove sort of
We are very
scene,
groove
you know,
led,
like
aren't we, and driven, yeah.
Stevie Wonder, Roy Ayers, Donald Baird, you know, all played these grooves out like for plenty of minutes, you know, and really got stuff going, and that's kind of, I think that feeds in quite a lot with what we do.
And is it the originals that you get a bigger kick out of, or because it's surely, you know, from creating a song, as you said, it's you kind of jam with an idea, create and structure that song, and then it must be a real buzz to put that out to a live audience. And
when people are dancing to
and when
it,
people are dancing, yeah. So I mean, that's obviously going to be a clear buzz, but you know, is it the original stuff you get a bigger buzz out of, or is it covering something with a bit of a twist, or is it the fact that it's such an eclectic mix of music that you guys put out there that keeps it, you know, alive for you and keeps you going?
I think it depends which gig it is and
Right,
which song
yeah.
we're playing, because you get different
Yeah,
results
because
depending on which
personally, I
one
mean,
it
I
is.
feel like if somebody's really digging it, then I get buzz out of it, and it doesn't really matter if it's an old original, a new one, or a cover. If people are really getting off on what we're doing, then I'm pretty happy with that, really.
If there's a party going down, we
Then,
enjoy ourselves,
yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
That's what gives you the buzz.
Yeah.
When you get that
When it's
audience
appreciated
interaction,
and everybody's having a real
really
good
into it.
time, there's nothing like it, is there? Really?
Icing on the cake, though, I think has to be
When it's
you've
your
played
original.
a classic cover or whatever you want to call it, then you drop your own tune in, everybody stays on the dance floor, and they might even get a little bit more excited, and that is, you know, that's the acid test.
Well, we've had breakdances and all sorts this year.
The acid
haven't we?
jazz test.
Yeah.
Personally,
That's
that's
really
how it
good.
works for me anyway. It's like, guess the odd one out, or guess what the right one, you know. But that's my perspective.
Yeah.
So you've clearly got some momentum, and would it be right? You spoke about Young Jack. Would you say you're as a funk band based in Hull? Would you say you're a bit of a niche, and would you say that's a bit of an advantage as well? Because you know, from my point, you know, we've literally got hundreds of indie/rock bands. You know, the electronic scene's pretty exciting in the city, and I think I see that going from strength to strength. And you only look at the range of club nights around the city that's getting massive national press. So you look at that, but you know, with you guys, would you see as being a bit of a niche, being a strength moving forward, or has it been tough, you know, to get to the point where you're at?
It maybe is a strength, but I mean, I think as a band, we'd rather there be hundreds of funk bands, you know. Do you know what I mean? You know, because it's about creating something that's bigger than just and it's about creating something that's bigger than just one band and the odd sort of night here and there.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'd love it. I mean, I think that's why. I mean, we've referenced Young Jack, but I think that's why, you know, we really, really like him. You know,
Yeah,
almost love him, like you know, quite deeply in love with Young Jack.
Well, all right.
It's
I
like,
think, you know,
it's
this should
you know,
be
they know what they're doing.
Walking
It's only
away.
English that's
Walking
kicking
away.
Manchester.
They know what they're doing, you know, and again they lock into the grooves and stuff. But hey, you know, stuff goes round in cycles, doesn't it? And you know, we're doing what we love doing. It wouldn't be right if we were sort of playing heavy rock and
I think
stuff.
one
really,
thing I'd like to add to what you just said there, Pete, is when I have feedback from my friends who come and see us, they've got used to it now, but initially there was actually some sort of like shock that there were guys stood there with instruments made out of brass blowing them and they're really loud, you know, and there was like people who didn't have guitars who were playing like Libertine rip-offs and stuff like that. It was like another level of music.
That's why nephew
Well, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it a little bit possibly at the last outdoor gig we did, so I was told people were a little bit like, whoa, this is a proper...
It's not a sample.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think from a sound point, that's a huge advantage, and visually as well. It is, like you said, it's something very different, and that can only be an advantage to you guys. So, what I'd like to know is what's your best gig that you've ever done, and is that something from yesteryear, you know, or is it something that you've been doing more recently, and why?
That's a good question. I think you can look at it in this. Remember, we've got a few lineups of Pearl's Cab Ride here. We're not all original. We're not all from the original seed. Some of us weren't even born when the first band was formed. So I think it's a tough one. I think Lynn and Pete, the front row guys here, can probably tell you something about a storming gig in the mid-90s. But
we used to play this club in Liverpool called Bourbon Street Jazz Club, and it was round the corner from Cream, and it was about 93, 94. And that place was absolutely just heaving every time we played there. And we designed posters, and we'd put them in a poster tube, and we'd post them to these guys who ran this club. And they were a bit dodgy, to be honest. But every time we got there was nowhere for these posters. None of them could be seen on any of the walls or anything. So we're like, well, how come we send you posters? It's about the third time we played there. We send you posters every time we're playing here, and we never see them. What happens to them? And they're like, oh, how do you send them to us? I'm like, we'll stick them in a poster tube. Oh, well, we ain't got a letterbox just in case we get firebombed. But some of the best gigs
we
we ever
there,
did
but
were
at
there.
midnight it changed, didn't it?
Yeah.
Into this really strange club.
Yeah.
Where you had
those
to
were
ring
good
a bell and then some really weird.
Well,
I
I think recently the
Bizarre.
best gig we ever did was
one for me.
Well, I was going to say Corner House, really.
what about Giving Up Food for Funk?
Well, Giving Up Food for Funk was ace.
Fruit, yeah.
The last Corner House one a few weeks back was pretty insane.
But I did
that
think
was,
the last Adelphi one was pretty special.
That was
It's,
The
amazing.
Delphi gigs have been great.
That one
We
where I
played
won that,
Fruit
yeah.
in February, and it was called Giving Up Food for Funk. Pete rang me up and asked me to come and play bass for Pearl's Cab Ride. I think it will have been in December 12, around that time. And I've not played my guitar for years. It was gathering dust under the bed. And I said to Pete, well, so what are we doing with this band then? He goes, well, we want to play gigs. I said, what do we want to do? And he goes, I want to sell out Fruit within a year. And I thought, right, okay, I'm up for that. And he just about did it. We did it in February of this year. We sold out Fruit, didn't we, guys? And it was
It was a hell of a night.
it was a great vibe, that.
Yeah.
Especially from a standing start for some of us. Yeah. I just about know all the notes on my E string now.
So let's look forward for the band, and what's a huge difference from when you guys were first started is the power of social media.
Yeah.
And the importance that plays in a band. You know, it must be very different now than when you first started out. And how are you finding that as a band? I mean, as I said, you see all of the bands that are involved in Humber Street Sesh and they play at the Sesh on a Tuesday night, and you know the young bands that are coming through and they're on it and they're posting stuff like that. How are you finding that as a band? Because it can be either time consuming or you've got to keep your focus.
It's almost like you could employ somebody to actually do it for you, to really keep on top of it. My daughter-in-law has actually just set up a company in Manchester doing that very thing, because it's so time consuming in order to keep on top of it, and we're all very busy.
Is she going to do ours then?
She would if we paid her. But yeah, she has, Colette, she set up this company. Because it is really, really hard to keep on top of it, because you really, to be effective on Twitter, Instagram, I was reading into it the other day, you have to do 5 tweets a day, 5 Instagrams a day, Nobody's got that kind of time to be doing all of that. To keep you up there, trend, you know, and to get trending, that would be like 5 an hour. So it's. I think we do the best we can.
The reach of
but
it is amazing.
Yeah,
And, you know, I've gone from walking around HU5 with a bucket of paste and some posters to clicking and reaching however many people.
I mean, the website is virtually there now, isn't it? We just need to do a few tweaks to that, and so then, so that will happen. And I feel that I've been kind of quite happy to not have the social media being that much, because I thought we need to get all the music, but I think the music is there now. Now this has to be just as good as that.
Yeah.
And it never used to be, but it is, unfortunately. It is just as important to have the good photograph, to have the good YouTube, to have
As a package.
all of those things, yeah.
As a package.
Because nobody wants to know you unless you have all. Everybody wants to go and look at that. Before you'd send a cassette, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd send a cassette to somebody and a little bio, but now they want to see, you know.
Yeah, it's quite nice not to have to go putting posters up in the middle of the
Oh,
night.
that's
isn't it?
brilliant. Yeah.
Just posts now in the middle of the night.
Get in
Yeah,
with my jacket.
And I actually, James, I think at
We need
8
to
o'clock
go.
we start.
So where can people find you online?
Well, is that?
Well,
okay?
it's www.pearlscabride.co.uk. Go and have a look and see what's on there. It's only going to get better.
And then we've
that's
also got
right.
the
Facebook,
Facebook,
Twitter, Instagram.
and it's all Pals.
And it's all Pearls
It's all
Cabaret.
Pals Cabaret.
So yeah, Northern Souls without the Northern Soul.
That's right.
I hear. So Pearls Cabaret with Browse Magazine live sessions and here at BBC live sessions. I've been James Ash, and have a great session.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much,
Thank you.
James. Thank you.